Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Learn From Us Investor Academy podcast. My name is Seth. This is Paul. Paul is still flipping through Tinder as the podcast started, but now he's with us.
A few swipe left.
He's very popular, very muy guapo, very handsome and sexy, and he just is very active online. We've done a few podcasts in the past couple weeks, talking about investing, talking about really growing your long-term wealth.
Myth, whoa.
So, just before this podcast started, I was like doing impressions of my child with like slurred speech and bad R's, and so it's I'm keeping that going. Although I really got our name down. I usually struggle with Learn From Us Investor Academy, but I got it down now. So we're all in this together. I sort of say that with my beard. People say, God, how long does it take you to grow this beard? I said, well, it's been a couple years, but I don't know what it's going to look like. So we're just all experiencing this all together. But
that's correct.
We talk about long-term wealth, and now Paul decided to be really wise if we swooped right into politics, Donald Trump, and taxes. I'm lying. I know how we'll get into this, Paul, because I just asked you before we started. Anyway, welcome. My name is Seth. This is Paul. This is Learn From Us. Right before we started this.
Is that what we're doing here?
I said, how do we get into this? How do we get into talking about some of the topics that you want to talk about? And, I don't know if you and I always see eye to eye politically, but one thing you started telling me, which, may or may not ring true with some folks, is you're a big fan of the idea that you're always very animated when someone says, like, that rich person, when that person makes a ton of money, it affects me, the normal person.
They don't say that, but that's what they're saying when they say the things they say about, we need to tax that person more, we need to charge them more. And my thought is, are they affecting you negatively? Is that what it is?
So I kept grasping in my mind things that you're telling me. Like, it's funny. Who'd want to be wealthier? Everyone.
Everyone wants to be wealthier.
Everyone wants to be wealthier. But along the same lines is the criticism of wealthy people. I think a lot of people, which I've heard a zillion times, a lot of people steer right toward they probably didn't work hard for it.
Yeah.
As opposed to.
Well, look, can we just do that one too first?
Sure.
First one, they didn't work hard for it. So how dumb are you that person didn't work hard, they made a lot of money, and you can't do it?
Yeah, you say that all the time.
So, hey, if you want to say that somebody who became wealthy didn't work hard to do it, I'd rather be the wealthy person who didn't work hard to do it than the person who wasn't smart enough to even not even do anything just to make it off.
Now, you know what? This goes back to, like I said before in previous podcasts, I work with a group called Focus 3. They do leadership, behavior, and culture training. I don't mean to keep pushing them, Paul, in our podcast, but you love them too. I think a lot of these things run parallel to each other in that, my new phrase is when someone says like, oh, they probably look at this. How is Paris Hilton or blah, blah, blah. They're making so many millions of dollars. I'm like, boy, my new phrase is instead of like joining in on the complaining about something you can't change I should cut the people right off. I'm like, yeah, she must work really hard. Like, instead of automatically going to these people don't work hard, it's like, yeah, it's now I think most of us would find it is hard to make a lot more money in this world. You got to do a lot of things.
And I wouldn't even say she works hard. Well, good for her. She took advantage of the opportunities that she had. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's all she's doing. She grew up with a great name. So instead of just sitting there saying, I'm going to sit at home doing nothing and collect a check, I'm going to go out there and use my name to my advantage to advance my career in life. Okay. Kardashians.
Why is it that normal people are so disgusted when Taylor Swift makes $150 million a year with her clothes, perfumes? Why? What is that?
That's too much for someone, they say.
Yeah. Oh, basketball players.
Our calculus teacher.
Your dad and
the basketball. My father's a physician who I love very much, and he always used to say, well, I don't get why these basketball players make $15, $20 million a year. All they're doing is throwing a ball through the hoop, and I save lives. Well, then you throw a ball through the hoop, Dad, and you go make $15 or $20 million. That's not the point. Well, yeah, that is exactly what you're saying, though. And I love him. He laughs about it, and he just goes, okay. And I'm like, but that's the whole point, Dad. If it's so easy what they do, then go do it. No one's stopping you. And if you sit there and say, I don't want to do that, well, then why are you complaining about them doing it? They're doing something that you don't want to do. You should be thankful that they're doing that for you. Like, I love it when somebody does something I don't want to do. It's great. That's one less person I have to worry about interfering with my life. You know what I mean? It's like, it's always this me versus them. And it's like, no, in true capitalism, everybody has an opportunity to do what they want to do. And of course, when I hear people say like, oh, but people in this country don't all have opportunities. I'm like, bullshit. Everybody in this country doesn't have opportunities.
Well, we might have started on different levels, but going forward.
Yes, we all, I mean, to me, it's so funny. People will say, oh, those entitled, rich, spoiled people. How spoiled are we that we think that nobody in this country, that people in this country are off? Like, even the poor in this country are the by far richest poor people in the world. Yeah. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying that they don't have it bad. Like, I look at bad areas with kids and I'm like, it really hits my core. But to say that there's no opportunity is not understanding anything about the world and anything about our country. It's really completely being completely narrow-minded and saying we have poor people in this country have cars, cell phones, shelter, things like that. Like, go to freaking, I was talking to a friend of mine who went to Nigeria 5 or 6 years ago.
I can only imagine.
And half the town that they're in of 900,000 people was HIV positive. Half.
Yeah.
HIV positive.
I'm sure they have access to a bunch of medicine then, right?
And that's their thing. And it's like they have nothing.
Yeah.
And they have no medicine and people are dying right and left. Like, literally, let's keep this in perspective. So when I hear this whole, like, nobody should make that, our calculus teacher in high school, Jerry Seinfeld shouldn't make $250 million. And I said, why not? He goes, nobody should make that kind of money. Well, how much is appropriate then?
That's what I had this conversation with my mom. Mom's in Akron. LeBron James is obviously very famous here and always will be. And there was always a resentment that he made so much money. It wasn't until he started building schools that now, of course, he's a hero. But I mean, you've been teaching me that it doesn't matter what other people make, that there's room for me to make money too, and let go of that mindset, And I think this also gets into taxes because you're very adamant. I think you regardless of political affiliation, you're not a huge fan of overtaxing the wealthy. Anyone. Yeah, I guess you're right. Anyone. Where I think a lot of people that I've talked to my entire life or things I've been told is like, well, yeah, but if you make more money, you should be taxed more. I mean, and it's easy to say when you're not in that bracket, right? To look up and say, well, obviously, right? But what are your thoughts on that?
So first off, I want to correct one thing. I don't feel like I've been teaching you. I've just been offering other ways of thinking about things.
Ways of thinking.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to convince you of everything, and my intention isn't to do that. We had a conversation at Macaroni Grill once of some words I use, and you really opened my eyes to those things. And of course, I stubbornly fought it, but in the back of my head, I was just like, he makes a valid point. So when it comes to taxes, people always, and keep in mind, I'm libertarian. I don't consider myself Republican or Democrat. I'm libertarian. Schultz from Starbucks is a Democrat, and he's now thinking about running for president as independent. I like him. I think he's very, very centrist, and I like his thought. I like his mentality. He's the word that we use, pragmatic. He's about being practical about things. So, do I think there'll always be a progressive tax system? Yes. The thing that bothers me is when people say we need the rich to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
The last time I checked,
you're right,
is that if somebody makes $1 million and somebody makes $50,000 and both of them pay 20%, the person making $1 million is still paying their fair share because they're still paying 20%. That's the definition of fair share. That is fair share of it. Now, if you want to, they do a great job of really spinning that term. The left does. More power to them. FYI, there are lots of Republicans who believe in a very progressive tax system. What my whole point is, if you are somebody who creates wealth for yourself, you're providing jobs. Yeah. You're building, you're investing, you're doing more. When people talk about estate tax, we should tax an estate because there's no reason a kid should inherit $10 million. Well, why? Well, they're probably going to go burn through it. Why is it a problem? If anything, you'd want that. It's not your problem. Well, not only that, though, they're going to go buy stuff. What does buying stuff do? Yeah. Puts money in the economy. It gets jobs. I mean, these things that they sit there. And then what they're saying is the government is better at handling the money than we are. Name me one thing in this world that the government has done well, efficiently. Tell me the last time you went to a government agency and you said, you know what? that was a really wonderful experience. They did a great job there. They were positive. They got things done fast. Do me a favor, call any government institution after 4:30 and let me know how many answer. You know what I mean? But our logic is, well, that person has so much money, we should give it. Tim made a good idea the other day. He said, just tell everybody, hey, you have to, if you make $1 million, you have to give 30% in some fashion to something. Oh, great. I'll give 30% away. Let me decide where it goes to, because foundations and charities have to go operate like a business. The government can just raise tax whenever they want. So the whole idea of saying, my life is worse because that guy makes a lot of money or that lady makes a lot of money, it's just so entitled and bratty.
You say this all the time.
It's so bratty. It's like, really? What does that have to do with anything? Look at the person and say, what are they doing with that money? If they're burning through it, great. They're putting all the money in the economy and hiring people because they're buying useless things. If they're investing the money, guess what? They're creating jobs. They're creating more and more jobs through the trickle-down effect of building things. I mean, look at me. I told you before, we make more money so we can do more projects. When we do more projects, we hire more people. We put money into more other subcontractors and other companies. I mean, this is an effect that happens throughout the economy, and yet we still criticize people who make a lot of money. And people have to remember one thing: a progressive tax system is built best on when a few people have more money. Think about that.
Say it again.
A progressive tax system is most effective and generates more revenue when a few people make more money. And here's the example. Let's say there's 10 people in a room. One makes $1 million and the rest make $0. Sorry. And let's say one makes $1 million, the rest make $10,000 each. You charge 10%. You charge 10% tax on the 10 here and 20% tax on the $1 million guy. You're going to collect $209,000 in revenue. Correct?
Yeah.
If there was all equal tax revenue, the revenue would be lower. Let's say it was all 15%. Your tax revenue is going to be lower. So you sit there and say, when people sit there, the whole entire idea of a progressive tax system wants a few people to make a lot of money. Because if it was all like fair, then the tax revenue would be lower. And that's what I sit there and always tell people. I'm like, you don't even realize that the progressive tax system that everybody pushes for, you guys need a few people to make a lot of money. And at what point is it too much? People don't realize that in 1963 or 1962 or 61, the highest bracket was 91%. Every dollar, and if you actually look at the history of tax code, the highest brackets were already reserved for people who made millions and millions and millions of dollars. Not now where the highest bracket's like $400,000 a year. It was a much higher level in equivalent today dollars.
Crazy.
Which is fine. I mean, I get it. We're going to have a progressive tax system, but let's be, to use the word again, pragmatic about it. Like, where are we going to get to the point, though, where we're just giving disincentive for me to go do more? Hey, Paul, we're going to charge you 90%. Well, then I'm just not going to do it. Why should I go generate all this income to go keep 9% of it, 10% of it? That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. But yet we want that because why? It's not right that person makes $5 million. Okay, well, that's fine. But did you take the risk they took? No, you didn't. If it was so easy to go make $5 million, you go make $5 million and give it away. LeBron James, huge Democrat, right? I'm quite sure if you look at his tax return, he takes every tax advantage he wants. And that line that says, give us more money if you just want to, he does not fill it. It's so weird to me that all these people who make a lot of money, who believe in higher taxes, don't give more to the government than they're asked to give and use every tax advantage they have to decrease their tax liability. The example I always give is John Edwards. When he was running for president, he was worth $70 million. He sat there one day and said, guys, my high tax system will maybe affect 3 or 4 people in this room, and 2 of us are on stage right now talking. It was Dick Cheney and him. But then when you went and looked at his taxes, he went and changed himself to an S corp so he could avoid payroll taxes on himself or some sort of Social Security tax. It's like, oh, that's weird. He's all big on hiring, charging higher taxes, but when given the opportunity to pay those higher taxes, he did not.
So, before we started this, I said, well, why don't we not talk about the politics and talk about the tax system? And you said, well, I want my opinion on these taxes to come through. And I said, well, I mean, aren't these just real numbers and facts? Can't we talk about them? And so maybe I'd like to get your idea on that, because news this week, couple more famous news stories, is that I saw recently that the deficit is now above 22 trillion.
It's terrible.
And
that's the total debt. Deficit's an annual thing.
See, I need to be educated about. See, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and maybe you can mention that. And then the other thing Tim was bringing up is that people are currently getting really upset because their tax return is much lower. some people who are expecting $6,000 in tax return are getting $500, and they don't even realize how and why that money is. So enlighten me.
So like you said, so the pragmatic part of me says we have a really bad deficit. Annually, we're losing money every single year. We're spending more than we make. That is not responsible. All that's doing is taking away from our future. Anytime you take on debt, you're taking away from the future.
Explain that further, because I always thought to myself, every president wants to tell, every incumbent talks about how the previous person ripped up the debt, the deficit. Probably
and then they
not,
continue doing it.
Yeah, it's just always going to be there, and I'm like,
well, that's not necessarily true. Clinton balanced the budget and had a surplus in 96, 97.
Okay.
And what did he take the highest bracket to? 39.6. And my comment then was, listen, the hard part is we're going to talk about politics, the differentiating views of politics.
I mean, at this point, when you say taxes and opinions, is it not that clear at this point that what these changes do to us?
Well, it's an opinion. So the left will sit there and say, just charge higher taxes. The right will sit there and say, no, charge lower taxes. It'll spur growth. It will lead to more revenue. I sit there and say, if you want to charge me higher taxes, fine with that. We cut spending too. We have to cut a lot of spending then also. What's the spending we cut? Listen, the U.S. government's the most inefficient, entity we have. We have to cut spending. If you're going to raise taxes, cut spending. If you're going to cut taxes, you got to cut spending even more. You know what I mean? To me, it's the raising taxes, cut spending to kind of equate things out. When that is more of a fact thing, but the opinion of how it's done. To me, the deficit is the biggest issue we have long term.
Why is that?
Whenever we take on debt, we have to pay it off in the future. So you're taking money from the future, taking it away. You're already earmarking that money for something else that could be going towards some sort of growth. So the same thing here. When you take on credit card debt, you're buying today to sacrifice the future, right?
Yeah.
It's no different. I don't like that. That is not good for the economy in general on a long-term basis. Now, 08, 09, when we went and spent tons of money in order to grow things, blah, 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 that was needed because we had a very big financial collapse and things went bad. It was to save the economy. The economy's been saved. Let's go now start tailing our spending back. We're congratulating the government when they only lose $300 billion in a year as opposed to $1 trillion. It's like, really? That's insane. In the 90s, I think we got to $200-some billion in a surplus. That's great. I'm all in favor of that. We were able to have a 39.6% highest bracket. And for me, I'm okay with those parameters. You say, hey, the highest bracket's under 40% and we're gonna have a surplus and we're gonna pay down debt. Oh, let's do it. The problem I'm getting now is I hear these newbies in Congress saying 70% taxes, all these things, but I don't hear anything about lowering spending then. It's like, hang on, guys. And then guess what? If we do it and we go into surplus, now it's tax return time. And guess who should be given the first tax return? The people who the taxes are raised the most on. And then people cry about that too.
Sure.
Why are they getting the tax?
They already have enough money.
Yeah, but we're the ones that were raised originally. Like, okay, got it. And I'm not sitting there saying, I just look at it and say, it's funny. And again, I'm not trying to get too political, but when people say you can't have an opinion, like you can't have an opinion on abortion if you're male. Okay, fine. Then you can't have an opinion on tax unless you've made a lot of money. Thank you very much. Like that doesn't work. That's not the way we do it. I just look at it and say, I want a surplus, but I think the surplus is done in two ways. Proper tax code. There's a thing called the Laffer Curve. Have you heard of the Laffer Curve?
You've mentioned it before. Tell me again.
Everyone, the Laffer Curve was created by the guy Philip Laffer or something like that, where it says if we had 0% tax rate, our revenue would be zero. If we had 100% tax rate, our revenue would be zero because nobody would work. So somewhere in the middle, there's going to be a peak. What is that peak?
Yeah.
That's the theory. You talk about, Paul, isn't it fact? We don't know what that exact most efficient tax rate is.
Still?
Yeah. I mean, listen, because there's so many, because guess what? Spending changes every year.
I see.
The economy changes every year. I mean, things are always changing. Do I accept the fact there will be a progressive tax system? There always has been. When the taxes first came out, like 1913, and I'm spitting here, I could look it up, but it was like 1% on people who made like $150,000 a year back then, which is like, or $5 million a year back then, which is like $100 million today.
Yeah.
It was astronomically insane if you paid tax. It was like it was something crazy. And I'm not, please don't quote me and say, Paul, you were wrong. It was
20,000.
What was that?
1% up to 20,000. I just fact checked you.
On 1913? But what's that in today's dollars?
Good question.
What's 20,000 in 1913 on today's dollars? It should say it on Wikipedia.
I will find out.
I can ballpark it.
Didn't they teach you in college that you can't quote Wikipedia because anyone can change it?
Wikipedia is actually one of the most reliable ones.
I know. I love that I love that thing. Do you
it's
get,
the best.
They ask for money. Do you?
I give it every single time they ask.
Me too.
Do you really?
I feel weird because it's like a website asking me for money.
It's a
but I'm
nonprofit
like,
though.
Hell yes, I love that place. I'm not handing them hundreds of dollars. But
What was that?
500, a little over 500,000. 507, I think it says. That's in 2013 dollars.
Really? Are you on Wikipedia?
Yeah.
I saw something on Wikipedia about. There was one that was in the millions. Are you sure about that, Timo?
Hold on, let me find out. Let me go to Wikipedia.
It's not 500,000. The cost of living doubles every 20 years. That's 5 doubles, which is it's 32 times. It's about 40 times more. It's at least $1 million. Anyhow, while Tim fact checks that, the whole point is that was the highest bracket, and it was 1% on that. I mean, we're talking about. I get it. There's gonna be progressive tax, but at what point are we just sitting there saying, "Time out"? You're just taking away from somebody's. I always ask people, name me somebody you know who works for a poor person. Doesn't happen. People who have money are the ones that invest and grow and do all that stuff. Like we don't want to disincentivize them from doing more. Now, does that mean we allow them to abuse workers? No, of course not. We're not trying to do that. But what I'm sitting there saying is it's okay to make money and grow a business, and that will help the economy. That's why we are the biggest economy in the world. That's why we have one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. For our population size, we're the highest, I think. You know what I mean? It's looking like the average person makes $55,000 a year. In India, the average person makes like $2,000 a year or something like that. I mean, come on, let's be real here. And I just look at it going, why is it always me versus them, us versus them, etc.? Tim, what you got?
It's saying it's 487,000.
It's not. It's not.
It's not on Wikipedia. It was some.
The inflation rate has been 3.5%. So 1.035 in 1913 to the 106th power times 20,000.
I love watching Paul do math.
$770,000. So either way, that was the highest bracket was 1% on 770,000 today. Right now, that bracket is 38% or whatever the number is. It's like we've gotten 38 times higher. And now, granted, in the last 100 years, the government's done a lot better about. I mean, I'd make the argument that a stronger government doing more, taxing more has made our economy so much better, et cetera. I'm not denying that a government being able to take care of things like roads and things like that isn't bad. Is bad. I'm not arguing that. But at some point, the argument back to me, I would say is, then why don't we do 100% taxes? We all realize 100% stupid, and I realize 0% stupid. It's somewhere in between. What's that rate? I don't know. But saying that we hate somebody because they make more because we don't, it's like, oh, it's so exhausting. Everybody wants to be rich, but
Yeah. My mother dearest, I love you. I was talking to my mom. She might have said something like that. Like, oh, this basketball player, this actor, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Ma, yeah. It's like, don't you want to make more money, Ma? Yeah, of course. It's like, well, all right. Say tomorrow you made 100,000. Oh, great. And then I said, the next day, 200. At what point would you want to stop before people start talking about how you made too much? Like, what's the number? Is it $500,000? Is it $1 million? It's like, I don't think many people would stop, right? They would. And that's the funny part is like, so I'm starting to think your way.
I've never heard anybody say, no, I'm good. I don't want to make more. Because if that's the case, if they offer you a raise at work, you should say, no, thank you. Just give it to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I've never heard I remember once a self-professed communist in college getting pissed when they saw their check and how many taxes were taken out. And I literally said to her, you're a communist. She goes, well, not, and she literally said these words to me, not when it affects me. And I go, that's exactly right. Communists are communists until it affects them. Then all of a sudden it's like, look at Bernie Sanders, a self-professed socialist. What's he worth? Isn't he worth a couple million? Wasn't his wife like the head of some for-profit college or something like that? He drives around in some convertible. It's like, hey, Bernie, you're a socialist and you enjoy a pretty good life. What's the deal?
Yeah.
What's the deal? Tell me. Dr. Zhivago, the guy who ran
28 million. Bernie Sanders.
28 million?
Yeah.
$28 million.
Hold on a second.
There's no way he's worth $28 million.
Wrong, Bernie. Give me a
That's
Bernie Mac?
That's the overall gross of Weekend at Bernie's.
What was that?
That was Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders. Listen, guys. Listen. This is what we deal with. I mean, we absolutely love Tim, but he's quickly with those sausage fingers, quickly trying to type in Bernie Sanders, and he looked up Barry Sanders,
The football-
former Detroit. Tim, God, I love you, bro. We need to get. I love this guy. He's gonna take my job if he keeps this quick. He's gonna take my job. He's so quick and witty.
And I'm sure it's grown. In 2015,
Yep.
it was 700.
We're still here, guys.
700
Don't
what?
worry.
712,000 in 2015.
Okay, so let's assume that's correct. Maybe now it's $1 million or whatever. It's like, hey, Bernie, if you're a socialist, why are you okay having $1 million? He'd comment like, well, I still need to retire. I still need to do this. It's the system that screws me. That's why I have to be forced to do this. Like, well, that's the great thing about capitalism. The great thing about capitalism versus socialism is you can do what you want and live with the repercussions. In socialism, you cannot. In communism, you cannot.
He made $1 million in 2017.
Listen, I'm surprised it's even that low. The guy probably gets speaking fees at the yin yang. So he's definitely worth, definitely a couple $1 million now.
How do we bring this back to us?
I want to teach people
What? Go.
the
You're doing great.
non-victim, non-entitlement mentality.
I think that's the end of it. I guess. Yeah. That's what you've been teaching me. Keep going with that
we
mindset.
talk about learn from us being about investing, and I've always said, well, it's more than investing. It's also about the way in which you look at life. It's sad to me when somebody says, woe is me, or I don't have this because of somebody else, or Paul, you just don't understand because you're not in my shoes. You're right. I don't understand when I'm not in your shoes, and that's why you need to listen to me, because I don't care what's in your shoes. If you care, everything is about why the world's against you and you're a victim, you're never going to amount to anything. We all have bad things that happen. All of us do. Whether you have money or not. All of us do. We talk about it all the time, and I mean, look at Michael Jordan. His kids had security. Look at LeBron. His kids have security everywhere they go. I'm not saying woe is them, but imagine if you had security everywhere. It's still a different lifestyle for you. Or everybody thinks that, imagine being LeBron's kid, all the scrutiny on Instagram. I mean, all these things I look at and going, I want to just teach people, be happy with what you have and the opportunities you have, and it's okay to go try to make it better, whatever better means. I don't know if it's necessarily financial. A lot of times it is for people, but let's just go make your life better, and let's stop sit there and blaming other people or why you deserve something because you think you work so hard. No, listen. If you do 10 things you think you work hard at them and all of them fail, it's something you're doing something wrong. Work smarter, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's a big thing for me, is teaching that mentality, because I feel like I had an entitled, bratty mentality when I was 21, 22, 23, and luckily somebody made one comment to me and it snapped me out of it really quick.
What was that?
I'm even embarrassed to say it, but it's probably good for me to just let it out there. I was doing a deal, my second real estate deal ever, and the financing was going terrible.
Terribly.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No, I like it. I really do. I'm glad you said that.
We've talked about language and linguistics and
You
how,
got that?
yeah, see, and how good I am at it.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to correct you. But
Oh, no, I appreciate that.
is that correct to say?
I don't know.
Get back to it.
And I said something happened on the appraisal. And I said, well, no, he said to me, he's like, well, we're getting the appraisal back and I'm hearing this. I go, geez, with my luck, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, Paul, your luck, you're buying a $3 million piece of property at the age of 23. What the hell are you talking about, my luck? And I was just like, fuck.
Well, that's a common phrase.
By the way, you're right, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's a common phrase. It was still in my mouth. And I was just like, fuck, this guy's right. I just said such a bratty comment. Imagine if I was saying this in front of an average person and I said, with my luck, I'd be like, go fuck yourself, asshole. Like, you're buying a multi-million-dollar property at the age of 22, 23. If you just ride that thing out, you'll be able to retire just off that one property alone. And I was like, damn. And that's when I stopped saying that with my luck and blah, blah, blah. And literally, and I don't believe that happens very often. I was very fortunate that there was and I always tell people, I change when I'm embarrassed. And I was so embarrassed by that comment. I was like, man, he's right.
That last paragraph just gave us an E rating on iTunes. Write that down, Tim. Remember to switch that over. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I will never forget that. And by the way, 3 or 4 years later, I told him the story. He didn't recall it at all. I go, hey, Dick, because I remember later on saying something. I'm like, he's like, how's life? I'm like, oh, great. He's like, that's why I love talking to you. Everything's always great. Everything's this. I'm like, Dick, that's because of you. He's like, what do you mean? And I told him the story. He's like, oh, I don't remember that at all. I'm like, yeah, Dick, we were on the phone. You said that. And I was just like, damn, this guy's so right. I'm such an asshole for thinking this way. And since then, it's like, and trust me, do I get negative? Absolutely. Do I get, I don't get woe is me and sorry for myself anymore. I mean, that literally doesn't happen anymore. But do I get negative about things? Of course I do. Do I get upset? Of course I do. But that's humans being humans. But it's also, we're going to have our blips. But I'm trying to teach people that no matter what your life situation is, there's something positive come from it. You know, I've even got to the point now where I brainwash myself where we're talking about anxiety before and the things I worry about the most. I think to myself, well, if they actually happen, guess what? I can stop worrying about them now because they happened. Like, that's how much I brainwash myself for. Like, I even think to myself, well, if the worst thing I can imagine happening actually does happen, I won't worry about it anymore because I'm done with it. It happened. I've experienced it. No more worry. And that's how much I've trained myself to think positively, try to think positively about situations.
Yeah, it's rubbing off on me. I think we've talked about this before, but you and I recently shared a book called The Evidence of Afterlife.
Yes, Evidence of the Afterlife.
And it was a scientific experiment-based study on what happens after you die.
Yep.
And I thought that basically the scientists over 30 years and 10,000 story submissions talked about, the idea that he thinks he's really proven that in the moments after a body passes away, that there is some sort of form of afterlife where there's a light and a voice and you see people that have passed and blah, 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 blah. And I think for both of us, all it did for me was, I don't know if I believe it, but I feel much easier about dying.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I don't think, and the one thing I'll clarify you on, I think he even says in the end, I'm not saying I've proven this, but based on the evidence of what I've seen, the only explanation I see that makes sense is that there actually is an afterlife.
Yeah, and that most of the, a vast majority of the people said it was just a very happy experience.
Yes.
In that, and so I didn't have a huge fear of dying or what would happen, but it sounds quite pleasant. It
does, and at the end of the day, by the way, I wasn't even talking about that. I don't fear my death. And I haven't for a long time. I'm just if I feared like somebody close to me dying, I'd be like, well, they die. Well, then I guess I can stop worrying about that because they can't die twice. You know what I mean? And by the way, I don't want anybody near me dying. I love everybody. But the whole point is I've taken the ultimate worst fear I could possibly imagine and figured out a way to think of it positively. And it wasn't even me going, okay, Paul, think about it positively. I mean,
that's precisely it. Yeah.
It literally just came to me. I was just like, well, at least if that happens, then I can stop worrying about that. And I can go live my life normal and all that stuff. So mentality is a big thing for me. Not being entitled, not being bratty. And guess what? I say entitled things, I say bratty things, and I ask those really close to me to call me out on those. My brother came to my office today and said, hey, you said this recently in a public forum. Please go delete that comment because it's very bratty. I go, sounds good. You're right. I went and deleted it. He was right. I made a bratty comment. He's like, and I didn't realize how bratty. He's like, Paul, when I first saw it, I didn't realize how bratty it was. And then it dawned on me later. I'm like, that was a pretty bratty comment. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Delete. So I encourage that from people who are around me and very close to me because I don't want to. I also understand that there's a reason why people look at those wealthy people and say "F you," and I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype, but at the same token, I also want people to realize that there's risk involved with things like if something doesn't go well in our business, I pay for it out of my own pocket, not my employees. Not somebody who's looking at me saying, look how lucky that guy has it. I pay for it. We had a fire at a property and the insurance company, a multi-billion-dollar company, didn't pay out what they're supposed to. It cost us multiple seven figures. We're suing the insurance company now and we'd be happy to get half that back.
Wow.
I look at that going, and the problem is we can't make the argument in court when I look at a jury and say, you cannot say this to a jury. If this happened to you, you would be bankrupt. It's only because we had money. I mean, that's how bad it was. I look at that going, and the insurance company just goes, sue us. So we had to. That's it.
Wow.
So these are the risks that we take. Now, do I have upside and things? Yeah, I just showed you the deal where we had 100 units and it's worth 8 and we were in it for 4.5.
Sure.
Great. But still, there's ups and downs to things.
Yeah.
Anyhow, let's not worry about other people. Let's worry about ourselves.
That's a great plan. And that will be the advice you'll get if you hire Paul and the staff here at Learn From Us to guide you on your way to building long-term wealth through investments in real estate. And I love the way all that sounds.
It does.
That's working for me. And I can't wait to I guess all of this sums up to like this mindset you're trying to teach people is to open their eyes a little bit more about what's possible and not to play the victim and just go get it. I love what you're teaching me. And man, I really can't thank you for everything you've done in my life so far. And it's been such a little, I have friends asking me, why are you hooking your trailer so much to Paul? Like,
they say that?
You could have, we could have done something together. And I said, well, because Paul will text me on a random afternoon and just be like, I remember we got in a pretty big fight in Mexico, which I'm still sort of upset about.
Are you?
No. What I mean to say is, I put myself in your shoes that like you take me down to your Mexican villa and then I start arguing with you and give you shit and you're probably walking away like, why did I bring this dickhead down here?
That's not it, but and that's not the way I wanted you to look at it. But okay, I appreciate you saying that. That's not the way I want you to look at it.
And then and then you just so other people ask me why, and I'm like, why I'm hooking my trailer to Paul or vice versa, and I'm just like, well, because he'll just text me and be like, I want to work with you for a really long time in my life. Like I feel that I see the advantages that we both have, and I'd love for this to go on for the rest of our lives. And I'm just like, no one else has ever said that to me, And
well,
it's
Beth did.
She's one, yeah, yeah, she has. She's great. Her and her new hair.
She married you.
Oh my God, have her on the podcast. Can you imagine? I don't know what we talk about, but what a podcast.
80 conversations.
What a podcast that would be. Thanks everyone for listening. I mean, I keep saying enough, man. We can't really thank you enough for the support we're getting. Paul and I text each other. Tim, we text each other, and like the feedback we get, people calling us and telling us how great things are.
Oh yeah.
I mean, no matter what happens, we're gonna keep chugging through and keep doing this. We know that content is king, so Mondays and Thursdays, 9:30 a.m. Tim does a great job of getting the podcast out, and what we're really doing is just learning from. We're all learning from you at the same time, and just learning about your thoughts on life and how to proceed and how to get to potentially where you are one day. That way, everyone can hate us because we make so much money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, learnfromus.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Hit us all up, and
it's somewhere on a screen right now, right?
Yeah, it's at the end.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thanks. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, sir.
See you.
Bye.